for spine-chilling true horror stories revealed. Haunted, cursed, and sinister tales unexplained. Emma couldn't shake the feeling. It wasn't just fatigue from another long night as a nurse, it was something deeper, something darker. The chirping crickets outside her neatly kept Ohio home suddenly seemed like whispers in shadows. She decomforted countless patients, healed their wounds, but every time dusk fell, the atmosphere thickened with unseen dread. At first, it was just the scratching. A slow, methodical noise from the attic above, as if something long dormant was stirring. The first time it happened, she dismissed it. Exhaustion does strange things to the mind, she told herself as she lulled her children to sleep. But when shadows flickered just beyond her living room window, doubt crept in, and terror clawed at her heart. What was hiding just out of sight? After another punishing night shift, Emma stopped by the local diner. There was an uneasy conversation brewing, hushed tones swirling around the booth like smoke. An elderly couple leaned in, faces drawn tight, speaking of a child lost decades ago somewhere in the town. Her pulse quickened. The name hung like a noose in the air. The whispers settled deep in her mind, echoing with questions. Why was everyone so rattled? What if I told you, one of the men said, leaning nearer, that not every shadow is harmless. A shiver traced down Emma's spine. She glanced around, blush creeping beneath her skin. Not far down the counter, Mr. Hargrove, a respected lawman and pillar of the community, sat obliviously nursing black coffee. She had always trusted him, a protector. But suddenly, his presence seemed to loom larger. Curiosity gnawed at her. The more she dug, the blacker the soil turned. The rumors coiled around her like a serpent, suffocating her trust. Mr. Hargrove was more than a friendly neighbor. His ties to that childless disappearance unearthed a past so deeply buried, it threatened to consume her. The whispers from earlier now morphed into a sinister chorus just outside her window. The scratching in the attic escalated, now accompanied by a refrain of her children's nightmares. Each dawn, they woke trembling, eyes wide with unspeakable fears. That evening, driven by an inexplicable urge, Emma ventured into the abandoned school at the edge of town. Dust swirled in the dim light, highlighting the faded posters' smiling faces of lost children. The air thickened, catching in her throat. She could feel the sorrow radiating from the peeling walls. This was where hope went to die. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into sleepless nights, the tension in the air almost palpable. The neighbors who once waved from their porches now avoided her gaze, eyes flickering with fear when she knocked on their doors. Isolation consumed her. Was she losing her mind? Or was there a sinister truth hiding beneath their manicured lawns, masked by white picket fences? Finally, she confronted Mr. Hargrove out by the mailbox, her heart hammering against her ribs. You know something? You have to tell me the truth. The world seemed to stop. In that moment, a flicker of darkness crossed his features, and a smirk graced his lips, chilling her to the core. What if I told you that those who disturb the past often find themselves lost in it? His words slithered into her mind, taking root as shadows began to close in around her home. Realization washed over her. Emma understood she was no longer just a mother seeking the truth. She was now a target in a game she never intended to play. With her children's laughter fading into whispered dread, she wondered when the line between predator and protector blurs. Who can she truly trust? A chilling breeze hit Emma as she stood frozen, her body tingling with every pulse of adrenaline. The once cozy lanes of her neighborhood now felt frayed, a threadbare cloak of familiarity slipping away to reveal something darker. Shadows lunged at her from the corners of her vision as she turned back towards her house. Her sanctuary was now a fortress under siege. the stagnant air no longer filled with the laughter of her children but with unknown fears. That night, sleep eluded her. The attic continued its relentless scratching, a morbid symphony that layered itself over the howling wind outside. Each sound tore at her like nails on a chalkboard, resonating in the pit of her stomach. She lay awake, her mind racing with thoughts of Mr. Hargrove's unsettling smile. What was it that he knew? The weight of the secret crushed her, and yet, a deeper instinct told her she had to pry it open. She could no longer afford the luxury of ignorance. Emma rose, heart thrumming in her ears, steeling herself to uncover the source of the scratching. She crept into the narrow hallway, her bare feet brushing against the cold wooden floor. Flashes of moonlight caught in the cracks of the door to the attic, illuminating a dark void. With every step toward the door, dread clawed at her insides. The hour was late, her family silent, but the walls felt alive with anticipation. Using a thin finger, she pushed the door open, wincing as it creaked in protest. The attic swallowed her, shadows spilling into every corner. Instinct told her to flee, to return to the safety of her family, but resolve gripped her. She needed answers. Stepping cautiously into the gloom, her phone's flashlight illuminated a space littered with forgotten memories. Old furniture, boxes covered in dust, and crumpled papers yellowing with age. A sudden cold gust surged through the attic, causing her breath to hitch. A whisper brushed against her ear. "Help me." It was faint and childlike, nestled in the thickness of the darkness. Emma's heart raced. The sound echoed an invocation, a plea pointing her further up the staircase to where the floor creaked ominously beneath her weight. "Who's there?" She dared to call out, voice trembling as she gripped the banister. The shadows responded with silence, absorbing her fear, urging her deeper. A wooden trunk stood ajar in the corner, vaguely familiar. Taking a step closer, she felt an unease crawl over her skin. Peering inside, she found an assortment of old toys and dusty books, each item a piece of a forgotten childhood. But beneath them, buried, was a small, ragged teddy bear with a button eye missing. A knot formed in her throat as memories flooded back. One of her children played with something almost identical as she reached for it. A jolt of icy energy shot through her arm. The attic dimmed further, shadows gathering to swirl around her. Breathless, she pulled her hand back. Whatever was lingering, it was warning her to stop. But the whisper returned, louder now. "Help me." Emma's courage wavered, yet curiosity wrestled with her fear. What was this child still doing here? And what had Mr. Hargrove truly involved himself in? She needed clarity. Turning around, she stumbled back, her pulse exploding as she caught sight of someone lurking in the farthest corner by the window, just beyond the reach of her phone's light. It was a figure small, slender, with hair hanging like rags. The child stood still, their head tilted unnaturally, a sinister smile twisting their lips. "Who are you?" she gasped, her heart pounding against her chest. The question hung heavy in the air. Instead of answering, the child moved closer, lifting a hand to point directly at Emma. The darkness pulsed around them, a storm of malice brewing at the edges of her perception. Everything spiraled as the truth clawed closer, but the boy's next move was catastrophic. Before she could react, the attic door slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. Emma knew then, she was no longer in control. She was about to discover dark truths that would send her spiraling into an abyss from which there would be no return. As the cacophony of whispers grew louder, twisting through her mind, one truth pierced through. She was treading dangerous ground, and she had awoken something far more sinister than she could ever comprehend. What did the boy want from her? What line had she crossed? Emma took a breath, heart racing, unable to escape the gripping dread that filled her. It was time to uncover the horrors behind the whispers, or lose everything in the process. The attic's darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. Emma's breath quickened as she stared at the child, their form now more monstrous than innocent. The smile had twisted into a grimace. Eyes wide, glimmering with a feverish hunger, the boy took a step forward. "Help me." The words felt like shards of ice shooting through her. Did he want her to help him, or was that just a lie? As he pointed, the shadows shifted around him, undulating like a living thing, creeping closer, drawing her in. Panic snatched at her throat. She swallowed hard, forcing words out. "What do you need?" The child replied with a laugh high-pitched and haunting. It echoed within the confines of the attic, bouncing off the walls, a grotesque melody that made her skin crawl. She took a step back, but there was nowhere to go. The door was sealed, trapping her within this nightmare. "Play with me," he whispered, and the air grew colder still. Instinct screamed for her to flee as if her very soul was in peril. But something deep within her resisted the urge. She wouldn't be a coward. She had to confront whatever this thing was. "Why are you here?" she demanded, hoping to reveal some truth buried in the boy's torment. The shadows thrashed around them, swirling wildly, consuming the feeble glow of her phone's light. "I thought you could save me," he said, voice modulating between childlike innocence and something far darker. The light flickered, leaving only glimpses of haunted eyes peering from the depths. Suddenly, a growl split through the night, reverberating within the attic. Dread pooled in her gut. Emma's eyes widened as the noise escalated to a monstrous cacophony, something predatory lurking just beyond the reach of her sight. "Join us," the boy urged, pointing with both hands now, as if summoning something from the darkness. She could sense it, the cold, creeping malaise creeping closer. The shadows twined tighter, nearly enveloping her. Emma's heart raced. No more questions. She had to act. While she grazed the edges of sheer terror, an instinct ignited within her. This was her sanctuary. With an involuntary scream, she dove past the boy, her body slamming into the door, rattling the handle. It refused to budge. The whispers crescendoed as if a chorus of lost souls surrounded her now. The boy watched, unblinking, while shadows stretched like claws around her. "Why won't you help?" he challenged, voice laced with somber betrayal. "Let me out," Emma screamed, her panic rising like a tide. The darkness roiled around her, thrumming with anger, the shadows writhing in retaliation. With a violent shove, she pushed against the door, desperation fueling her rage. Light flickered momentarily, about to extinguish. "Help! Someone help me!" she cried. "No one will come for you," the child's voice echoed, wrapping around her like barbed wire, choking off her breath. Through the thick veil of shadows, she glimpsed movement, a darker presence, massive, looming in the opposite corner of the attic, demanding her attention. "Don't look! Don't look!" she chanted silently, but her gaze was glued to it. A massive figure, veiled in shadow but with a distinctly human shape, emerged in the gloom. Tendrils appeared to snake from its limbs, pulsating with a life of their own, yearning for her. "Join us," the darkness crooned, seductively sweet yet saturated in a sinister hunger. This was not a sanctuary. It was a trap, and she was the bait. Just as she turned to run, the temperature dropped sharply. A gnawing terror filled her ears. She would have to do the unthinkable to confront whatever this being was, even if it consumed her. "Emma, don't you see?" whispered the boy, his voice now turning softer, almost pleading. "You are part of this story." As shadows coiled around her, Emma realized she was no longer the hunter. She had become the prey, and the heart of the darkness was about to show her the truth, the unspeakable reality, hidden within the attic's sinister embrace. But would she have the chance to uncover it before it was too late? The shadows lunged, tendrils stretching, reaching for her with a desperate hunger. Emma stumbled backward, the back of her legs hitting something solid. She gasped, the air thickening around her. It was like trying to breathe underwater. "Join us," came the boyish voice again, soft yet insistent, as if his very being yearned for her acceptance. "No," Emma screamed. She wouldn't be pulled into this darkness. She struggled to push herself off the floor, but the weight of the shadows was suffocating. The boy's laughter rang out, jagged and sharp, lighting up the emotional landscape with dread. With every breath, her resolve grew stronger. Clenching her fists, she turned toward the monstrous figure still looming in the corner. Its presence felt almost sentient, like it was waiting for her to make her next move. Emma's heart raced. This was it. Fight or flight, and she wouldn't let fear claim her. Gathering what courage she had left, she shouted, "What do you want?" The shadows stilled, and the boy stepped closer, his expression shifting from mockery to something more sorrowful. "You don't understand, you can't leave." Waves of panic threatened to drown her again. "I have to get out. Let me go." A gurgling laugh erupted from the figure behind the boy, filling the attic with a sound that was both chilling and disorienting. It sounded like a choking breath, but heavy with malice. More tendrils unfurled, curling through the air like snakes coming to life, reaching out toward her with a tactile intimacy that made her skin crawl. "Break the cycle," the boy urged, a flicker of desperation breaking through his grotesque facade. "Help us all escape." "Why should I help you?" Emma shouted. Was he really just a lost child? Or was he a part of this place's dark web? Because he hesitated, his features twisting again. "The more you struggle, the more we're trapped. You're stuck here now, with us, and we're not alone." The attic pulsed with the weight of his words. Heavy, trapped souls everywhere, unseen yet felt, shared in this twisted collective. A torrent of whispers began echoing all around her, a chorus of lost spirits harmonizing with the boy's plea. "Help us," they echoed, 1,000 voices pleading, clawing for the light. Something in her shifted. Although fear still clutched at her heart, she took a moment to regard the boy. Her instincts screamed for her to flee, but beneath the terror, she discerned a hint of innocence threateningly distorted, yet genuine. "What's your name?" she managed, focusing on the child, desperate for clarity amid the growing chaos. "Tommy," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "We all need to break free." Tommy, such a simple name, felt so out of place, so wrong among the shadows and sorrow. Suddenly, a rush of warmth shot through her, buoying her spirit against the chill that threatened to swallow her whole. "Break free?" she repeated, still struggling to understand. What could break such a wicked hold? The murmurs escalated, echoing louder as if urging her to grasp whatever thread of hope had just appeared before her. She had a choice, a fragile flicker of light amid unending darkness as she considered this possibility. Tommy's eyes shone brighter, reflecting both longing and fear. "Only you can help us." The looming figure behind him pulsed with anger at her hesitation. The shadows writhed, thrashing in a fit of frenzy. Suddenly the attic plunged into an abyss of darkness, the air thick with dread. Emma felt herself being pulled deeper into that place of torment. Was there truly a way out? "Your choice, Emma. Help us or become one of us." Tommy's face twisted in a tormenting smile, that innocence all but vanished. Emma could feel the pressure building, reality slipping. She was trapped between decisions, one leading to her escape, the other spiraling her into an eternal nightmare. That heartbeat of uncertainty. Emma grappled with a choice so monumental it could shatter the darkness or seal her fate. Would she take the plunge into the cold unknown, hoping to save the lost souls, or would she succumb to despair, surrendering to the shadows forever? As shadows pooled at her feet, she felt a pang of determination welling inside her. "I will save you," she whispered. But what if a greater evil awaited her if she succeeded? The shadows trembled, poised and restless. And just like that, the attic crackled with chaotic energy, and a new voice echoed within, challenging her steadfast resolve. "Will you still, after all I've shown you?" The darkness quivered, waiting with bated breath, as Emma took a step forward, ready to confront the truth that lay just beyond the shadows. The moment Emma took that step, a thunderous crack resonated through the attic. The shadows jolted, and the air whirled into a wild tempest, pulling at her clothes and hair. Tomorrow's breeze had nothing on this savage gust. Felt alive, bitter, and angry. "Emma!" Tommy cried, his voice a mixture of fear and authority. "Don't listen to it." But the voice resonated again, deeper, echoing through her mind like a chant. "Help us, help yourself." It twisted through her thoughts, weaving a dangerous thread of temptation. The heaviness in her chest increased. Figures emerged from the gloom, faces contorted in anguish, eyes wide with unending despair. They pressed closer, mouths moving in silent screams. Their shapes flickered like flames, ethereal yet all too real. Each one seemed snared in an invisible grip, their hunger palpable. Her heart raced, and she stumbled back, the weight latching onto her with icy fingers. "No! Get away!" she yelled, panic rising. With one frantic sweep of her arm, she struck at the closest figure, a tattered woman whose eyes reflected a sorrow so deep it chilled Emma's bones. The woman didn't flinch. Instead, a wail erupted, a sound so mournful it churned Emma's stomach. The spirits closed in, their breath cold and bitter. "Join us," they pleaded, a chorus of longing that echoed through the attic walls, battering against her sanity. "Stop it," Emma shouted, fighting to shield herself. She could feel their collective despair trying to invade her mind, wrapping around her like suffocating vines. Desperation ignited her will to resist. "You don't control me." Tommy reached out. "Emma, listen. It's trying to twist your thoughts. You have to fight." Through the commotion, she could see the sinister figure lurking behind the shadows, its grotesque features morphing in the dim light, stretching into a smile that promised destruction. "Will you ever escape, dear girl?" it mocked, advancing slowly, predatory. Her instincts screamed at her to bolt, but she couldn't move. All her thoughts spiraled into chaos: fear, doubt, defiance. The air thickened as if the shadows held their breath, waiting for her next choice. "Break the cycle." Tommy's voice broke through, steady yet strained. "It needs you. Don't let it win." The suffocating darkness pressed in, inducing a sense of claustrophobia. Emma's pulse thundered in her ears. Was this all a trap? Was there even a path to freedom? She wanted to curl into a ball, to disappear, but the thought of leaving Tommy and the tortured souls behind ignited an unfamiliar fire in her. "Why you want me to help you?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "What does that even mean?" A new tide of whispers surged around her, louder now, insistent. "Set us free, you've chosen us," but a sense of doubt gnawed at her resolve. How could she trust them? What if they were as twisted as the figure looming nearby, intent on dragging her into a chasm of despair? The shadows surged toward her, tendrils reaching with new urgency, dragging her closer to their call. "Help us! Free the lost!" They begged again, voices merging in a cacophony. Just like that, Emma's choice loomed larger than before. She could choose the shadows, find unity in their desolation. Or she could fight against the tide and seek a way out, a way to shatter this horror. Taking a deep breath, she whispered, "I want to join you." But would her defiance be enough to break the hold tightening around her throat? Then face the consequences. The cruel voice from the depths chilled her soul. It let out a low, terrifying chuckle, reverberating against the attic beams, shaking the very foundations of her being. A sudden surge of darkness erupted, throwing her back hard against the wall, knocking the breath from her lungs. The shadows writhed and roared, furious at her rejection. "What are you doing?" Tommy shouted, his voice desperate as he struggled against the pull of the monstrous form. "You have to believe." In that moment, the walls flickered with visions, a glimpse of a path leading to faint light, obscured by chaos and despair. Behind the shadows, she could almost see. But could she reach it before the darkness consumed her entirely? As she fought against the weight of despair, something deep inside her ignited. "I will break this cycle," she cried, the determination surging back. But as the tendrils lashed out, ready to ensnare her fully, a chilling realization descended. What if breaking the cycle only strengthened the darkness? And as she grappled with that realization, the shadows roared in response, hungry for her fate. Would she endure the malevolent storm, or would it swallow her whole, leaving nothing but silence behind? The darkness surged, a living thing intent on claiming its prize. Emma, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest, felt the world swirl around her, reality bending under the weight of dread. The shadows, restless and relentless, twisted, reaching for her with claw-like extensions that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. A frigid despair threatened to overwhelm her senses, consuming both hope and reason. "Emma!" Tommy's voice cut through the chaos, but it faded, strained by the oppressive howls of the Forsaken. The faces surrounding her writhed, their empty gazes piercing into her very core, igniting every fear she ever harbored. "Free us!" One twisted figure shrieked, and with each word, a flicker of recognition ignited within her. Memories of her own doubts, her own pain flashed before her eyes, echoing the anguished cries. She felt herself standing on the edge of an abyss, the weight of their suffering pulling her closer. "No, I want tea." The words came out weaker than intended, yet they embodied a resolve she didn't quite believe. But it was enough to buy her a moment's reprieve. The thrumming darkness hesitated, a titanic wave momentarily stalling. "Join the fold, Emma." The sinister voice crooned, smooth and silky, like a lover's caress. Merely a breath away from her ear, it promised comfort amid chaos, understanding among agony. "You would never be alone again." She fought against the cool whisper, shaking her head as if to dispel the corruption it wove into her thoughts. "You're lying," she shouted, pushing back against the invisible chains tightening around her. "You're not my salvation." But then, beneath her defiance, there lay a flickering doubt. The shadows weren't just taunting her. They yearned for release, a release she herself craved. Each spirit reflected fractures of her own life, the regrets, the missed chances, every sorrow entwined with each ghostly visage. "If you walk away, you only condemn us to eternal torment." The woman with the sorrowful gaze stepped closer, its eyes wells of deep-set pain that stared into Emma's soul. In that moment, Emma felt an unyielding grip around her wrist, the tendrils snapping to life, wrestling her closer. Panic surged, constricting her breathing as fear clawed at her chest. "Tommy!" she screamed, desperate to break free from this treacherous hold. But he was still there, fighting against his own fate, struggling to cast off the shadows that sought to snare him as well. "Fight it! Don't give in! Break their hold!" His voice, strained but loud, blasted through the despair. It struck her like a lifeline in a stormy sea, grounding her amid the tempest. Taking a shaky breath, Emma thought of all she had to lose: the warmth of friendship, the flicker of joy that reminded her of life beyond this sinister abyss. "You won't take me." Her voice rose, forceful despite the chaos. "I will not become a pawn in your game." The brutal laughter erupted from the ever-present figure lurking in the shadows, its monstrous face shifting into a twisted smirk. "And what will you do, little girl? You're trapped. You need to see the truth." The shadows roared, their fury escalating at her refusal. It felt like a surge of anger directed toward her, a dark wave threatening to swallow her whole. The attic trembled, dust raining down like fallen stars, the structure groaning beneath the weight of their fury. She felt that moment of quiet again, just a beat before chaos erupted. Struggling, Emma gathered every ounce of her will, pushing against the suffocating dark. "No, I'm not afraid anymore." But was that even enough? The shadows lunged, ready to consume her. What she didn't know would change everything as a veil of darkness enveloped her. She realized with terror that the shadows had started to transform again. What would they become this time? Would love morph into hate within their grasp? And as she braced herself against an impending disaster, she had to ask herself, could she outsmart a predicament that relished in despair? The shadows writhed closer, a suffocating blanket pressing down on Emma. She felt the weight of unseen eyes, a storm of agony swirling just beyond her reach. Each breath she drew felt laced with despair, as if the air itself was a toxic whisper urging her to yield. "Emma!" Tommy's voice, a lifeline, anchored her in a sea of chaos. But his cries were drowned out, silenced by the cacophony of tortured souls writhing in torment. They began to inch forward, the fingers of darkness pulling them toward her, merging their chilling embrace with her own fear and regret. Then, a flicker of light, a beacon amid the consuming dark. It emanated from Tommy, shimmering like a fragile star in an endless night. "Fight!" he shouted, his words igniting something deeper within her. Emma felt the warmth of determination surge through her veins. "Get away from them!" she screamed, even as she felt the shadows inching closer, curling like smoke around her legs. With every ounce of strength, Emma pushed her thoughts back against the encroaching despair. Yet she was still on the precipice of surrender. The shadows swirled mercilessly, morphing into grotesque forms, twisted versions of people she once knew, faces filled with anguish and desperation. "Help us," they pleaded. "We can be free together." The temptation twisted painfully in her chest. Their words were like siren calls, promising solace and escape from her own burdens. All too real was the ache of her own loneliness and pain. "No," she gasped, shaking her head violently, a desperate refusal echoing her own resolve. "This isn't freedom. It's a trap." As if in response, the shadows lashed out. A sudden snap echoed in the attic as dark tendrils grabbed at her ankles, pulling her down like the tide. Her heart raced wildly, a ferocious drumbeat against the storm. "Let go," she screamed, yanking free just in time to dodge a shadowy claw. "You aren't my family. You're my nightmare." Their anguished howls grew louder, a discordant choir spiraling toward a violent crescendo. "Join us. Join our family." And suddenly, Emma couldn't tell if the voices were coming from the shadows or from deep within her own psyche. Was she truly alone, or were those figures pieces of herself, longing to be reconnected? The walls creaked ominously, the very structure around her groaning under the weight of the dark fury outside. Emma could feel the temperature drop, an icy breath against her neck. Her mind raced. What if she was losing control? "I want to be like you," she insisted, her voice cracking but unwavering. "I refuse." But beneath her resolution lay seeds of doubt. The laughter echoed in the haunting dimness, mocking her defiance, filling her with dread. "You can't escape who you are, Emma. We are all just shadows waiting for the light to fade." She needed to see a way out, a glimmer of hope in this vortex of despair. With renewed vigor, she reached inside, summoning her will to confront this dark reality. It was a fierce battle, a fight she couldn't afford to lose. In that moment of clarity, she saw it the faintest glimmer, a path woven from memories of laughter, triumph, and love tucked away in the recesses of her heart. "Strength comes from within," she shouted, and as the shadows recoiled, she focused on that spark, channeling it like electricity into the murky abyss. But just as she felt the shadows begin to sizzle away, the ground trembled. A violent quake shook the attic, and she stumbled, aware that the very foundation of her world was about to collapse. With a scream of rage and defiance, Emma braced herself. The darkness shuddered violently. The shadows morphed again, becoming something even more sinister, something she never expected to see. What lay ahead was more terrifying than she ever imagined. Would she still have what it took to confront it? As the darkness loomed before her, a chilling thought struck. What if the real monster was within herself? The shadows pulsated, and from them emerged a figure more horrifying than the rest, a pale reflection of Emma herself, yet void of warmth and humanity. Dark hollows replaced her eyes, and a twisted grin stretched across its face. This echo of herself was the physical manifestation of her fear, a mirror showing all that she wished to hide. "No, no." Emma stumbled back, panic clawing at her throat. The sinister copy stepped forward, gliding as if on air, a predator in search of prey. It whispered in a voice that slithered into her mind. "You've always known it. The darkness that lives in you. I am your truth. We are one." Shaking her head, Emma desperately scanned the attic. Her heartbeat drummed a frantic rhythm as she realized the shadows were no longer just reaching for her. They were closing in on Tommy, forming a cage of despair around him. "Tommy!" she screamed, reaching out, but the walls began to ripple, trapping him within a darkness that consumed all light. "Fight it, Emma. You have to fight." His voice echoed, but it felt distant, muffled under layers of suffocating dread. The monstrous reflection drew closer, as if feeding off her terror. "Run? You can't run from what you are. You born from pain, destined to return to it." Its laugh resonated like nails on a chalkboard, pulling at her sanity. "No, you're wrong. You don't own me," Emma shouted, surprising herself with the ferocity that burned within. She focused on moments of joy, the sunlit days, the laughter shared, the love that had once defined her existence. I am not my shadows. With each thought of hope, the grotesque figure shrunk back, but it lunged forward with renewed rage, extending its claws like daggers ready to tear her apart. Emma felt it scratch at her soul, and she screamed as visceral agony coursed through her. But, within that pain, flickers of defiance ignited. She was still here, still standing. Strength comes from choice, she declared, her clarity igniting bright. She pictured her loved ones, memories swirling around her like ethereal lights, pushing against the shadows. Determined, she thrust her hands out forward, sending a shockwave of warm energy rippling through the dark. But darkness retaliated fiercely. The walls rumbled, threatening to crumble, each crack muffled by the angry howls of the tormented souls around her. Shadows lashed out and its fingers scraped her skin, tearing at her confidence, whispering cruel lies. They will abandon you. You are alone. You are nothing. No, she shouted back, and with every ounce of will, summoned memories bright enough to burn those lies to ashes. With her heart racing, she channeled every ounce of light she could feel, rejecting her fears, breathing warmth into the cold. The room exploded in brightness. A surge of energy erupted, pushing back the shadows, sending them flailing like paper caught in a storm. But the reflection stood resilient, claws outstretched, twisting with a horrifying speed. You cannot escape yourself. As the blinding light pushed back against the gloom, flashes of her past filled her mind, moments of laughter, hope, the undeniable strength of the connections around her. She felt herself lifted, floating on that promise. But then, in the distance, a chilling sensation spread. The bright light flickered. Emma! Tommy's urgent cry broke through the glow, but something dark swept over, blurring her vision. Suddenly, she was falling a dizzying plunge into a chasm of darkness. Was this the end, or merely another beginning? She was spiraling away from the warmth, feeling dread wrap around her like a cloak, the sinister figure still looming, still laughing in that familiar yet crumbling voice as the darkness threatened to engulf her once again. A single question roared in her mind. If she lost this fight, would she ever regain her light? What awaited her in the heart of that consuming abyss? Emma's breaths quickened, fear gripping her fiercely. The shadows pulsed, hungry for her essence, and the real battle was just beginning. Falling deeper into the void, Emma felt an icy grip fasten around her heart. Her lungs fought for air as the suffocating chill wrapped tighter, cutting off her thoughts, consuming her screams. The familiar laughter of her dark reflection echoed amongst the swirling shadows, reverberating through her like a twisted melody. You think you can overcome me? I am everything you fear, and more. As the depths of darkness closed in, flashes of terrifying memories assaulted her mind, moments when she felt powerless, trapped in situations that left her feeling less than whole. Times when vulnerability crept in, leaving her raw and exposed. She could hear whispers, echoing doubts she thought she had vanquished long ago. Emma, you're a coward. You can't face the truth. No, I will not listen, she gasped, fighting against the trying haze. But with each pulse of the shadows around her, the doubt seeped deeper into her core, and she felt her resolve shatter like glass. The sensation of falling ceased, and her body landed with a thud on a cold surface. Frantic and disoriented, she took in her surroundings. It felt like a mausoleum, dim, lifeless, the air thick with desperation. Tombstones etched with names she hadn't recognized loomed overhead. Welcome, said the reflection, now looming over her, its voice dripping with sadistic amusement. This is where fear resides. Your soul's graveyard. Emma scrambled to her feet, her pulse racing. This can't be real. You're just a trick of my mind, she shouted, feeling the power of her will starting to fade. But look around you. It gestured to the shadows that began to stretch and expand, filling the tomb-like space until she felt trapped within her own despairing thoughts. Each shadow is a regret, every whisper a reminder of your failures. And then she heard it, the faint wailing of what sounded like tormented souls. High-pitched cries, hollow and mournful. They seeped into her very being, resonating her own fears. Help us, they echoed. The reflection tilted its head, a smirk unfurling across its face. They are yours, Emma, not mine. A feeling of dread settled heavily in the pit of her stomach. No, I can't be responsible for their pain. But deep down, she felt the truth, the weight of countless moments lost, of promises broken in the face of her fears. Join them. Embrace the darkness. It hissed, the chilling words wrapping around her like a serpent, tightening with each breath. She shut her eyes, trying to remember the light, the warmth of her loved ones. This isn't who I am, she screamed, pushing back against the dark gravity. It was an uphill battle against the pressure of their agonizing wails. But as she struggled, shadows began to reach for her, pulling at the edges of her sanity. They wrapped around her arms and legs like vines, dragging her back toward the reflection, which loomed ever nearer, each movement slicing through the air. Oh, but it is Emma. You are not alone. You've always been trapped in your own mind, it said with a sickly sweet tone, happiness twisting effortlessly into sinister glee as despair settled deeper in her heart. A voice broke through the shadows, a familiar call cutting through the thick fog. Emma, you can fight. Remember who you are. It was Tommy, his voice a beacon amongst the cries, with renewed determination. Emma opened her eyes, finding herself amid the swirling darkness now dotted with flickers of light. Something within her shifted. I am more than this, she shouted defiantly, unwilling to let shadows dictate her fate. But as she fought to break free, the ground shook violently. The souls in torment grew louder, their cries merging into one deafening crescendo. The shadows morphed, becoming living, breathing nightmares around her. Emma felt a surge of hope, but at what cost? As darkness clawed its way toward her, almost tasting her pain, a new thought pierced through the chaos. If she triumphed over this darkness, what price would she pay to banish it forever? The abyss yawned wide beneath her, hungry and insatiable. What price would her victory demand? With a roar that shook the very rafters, Emma knew she had only one choice left. This wasn't just about her. It was about every lost soul tethered to this horror. Each cry wrapped around her like chains, binding her to their pain. Enough, she bellowed, conjuring every ounce of defiance lurking deep within her spirit. I choose to break this cycle. The room pulsed with a sudden warmth, light spilling in. The shadows hesitated, recoiling. The reflection, a twisted version of herself, swept forward with renewed anger. But she stood firm, fists clenched. You do not control me. I'll face my fears. And as if responding to her resolve, the atmosphere shifted. The oppressive darkness gathered, swirling menacingly before her. You cannot escape your truth, Emma. You will always come back to the shadows. It spat, its face a haunting rendition of her own fears, every regret laid bare before her. But Emma felt a surge of courage. That's where you're wrong, she yelled. Those are not my truths. I've made mistakes, but I am not them. With that declaration, she focused on every moment of light in her life, the laughter with her children, the support from friends, the love that had fueled her heart. Each thought glimmered like a star against the blackened void. You're all so focused on the dark that you've lost sight of the light. It exists. It always has. As the shadows thrashed and shrieked, Emma felt warmth radiate through her. Let them go. Let everyone go. You don't own them. Her voice echoed, stronger now. I choose to embrace the light. I refuse to be defined by fear. A powerful burst of light erupted from her heart, sweeping away the clutches of despair, illuminating the walls and the faces of the lost souls behind her. They momentarily flickered, confusion washing over their despair-riddled expressions. Look, Tommy shouted, standing resilient against the darkness. She's breaking through. One by one, those trapped souls looked towards Emma, their eyes reflecting that same glimmer of hope, the faint light she had summoned. With her determination as fuel, they began to rise, echoes of their lost childhood laughter creeping in to join her call. Together, Emma roared, the energy swirling around her, binding her to their collective will. We rise. The walls trembled, the shadows growing frantic as bursts of light expanded in waves, erupting against the darkness that had long barred them from peace. Each spirit transformed, their faces brightening as they found their strength alongside her. "You can't escape," the reflection screeched, the twisted grin faltering as it realized the potency of Emma's resolve. "You're shackled to despair forever." "No," Emma shouted, pushing back even harder, summoning that light until it turned into a brilliant beacon, illuminating every corner of the attic. The overwhelming darkness recoiled, howling, as she reached toward the figure, grasping her own reflection in the process. "You will not live in me anymore." The shadows quivered and began to fracture, splintering like glass shattering on a cold floor. They dispersed into vapor, fleeing before the radiant glow, leaving only a pulsating heartbeat of strength echoing through the remnants. As the light swallowed the darkness whole, Emma felt those chains slacken, the oppressive weight lifting until she stood taller, her spirit soaring. The voices around her transformed from cries of despair into triumphant cheers of liberation. "Thank you," Tommy exclaimed, tears of joy flooding his eyes. "You did it, Emma." Breathless, but filled with a peace she had never known, Emma turned to him, a smile breaking free. "We did it." And then, as the light swept through the attic in a final blaze, they were engulfed in warmth. Emma's heart raced in harmony with all those who had once been lost but were now free, finally unburdened from the chains of their past. Together, they exited the darkness, stepping into the radiant embrace of dawn, where fresh beginnings awaited. The haunted attic behind them dissolved into mere memory, a chapter closed. Emma embraced the moment, inhaling deeply, felt her family's laughter echo like a song of hope. They had transcended darkness and in doing so, carved a path toward brighter days. In the end, she learned that the shadows would always exist. They were part of her story, but they did not define her. Emma, with her children at her side, walked forward, leaving the darkness behind, woven into light and love. And just like that, she knew she had emerged, radiant and true. Now, if you've enjoyed this journey and don't want to miss the next story of courage and hope, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for the channel. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, and let us keep this community growing. And I want to hear your thoughts. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. What did you think about Emma's journey? Finally, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. We're stronger together, and your support means the world.